of me pulling up in front of a house one day after I'd been to that seminar about how to get church building kind of people. The grass was literally knee high. There was no driveway, just a couple of twin trails that disappeared in the weeds, so there hadn't been a car driving in there a long time. And literally sat there and realized the porch was broken, the porch eave was sagging, the porch steps looked rotten, and I could sit in the car and see that the front screen door was hanging about 45 degrees open, like, and the wire was pushed out like bubbles, just like the screen wire had been pushed out within. And I honestly almost didn't get out. Somebody had given me the name of that boy and that girl that lived there at church and said, go call on them, they're friends of mine. And I sat there and I thought, these people aren't church builders. They'll never help us do anything here. Oh, my good Lord, they can't even mow and pick up trash. But then I realized that member would ask me, if I called on them. So I got out of the car. And I literally walked through that. We call it Dallas grass. I don't know what it is. It just leaves a little black residue on your trousers. And I shook it off when I got up to the porch. And then the steps were broken. And looking down, trying to find a safe place to step, I literally walked through a cobweb on that porch. And it just, oh man, I just pulled that junk off my head. And I stood there on the porch and I wondered why I was there. And I just disgustedly thought, dear God, why in the world? I moved around that broken screen and knocked to hurry up and get it over. And she came to the door dirty, disheveled, dirt on her legs. I mean, really barefoot and dirty, the mama. And I handed her a card and I said, hey, I'm Danny Carpenter. I'm just visiting people, inviting them to my church. And I just want to stop by and invite you and your husband to come to church. And she said, oh, well, please come in. No, it's okay. I just want to give you a card. And she was so insistent, please let me go get my husband. And I didn't want to. Honest to God, didn't want to. But I stepped inside that room. Honestly, the room was lit by one twisted cord bulb that hung from the ceiling. Might have been a lamp there at one time. Now it's just a cord and a bulb. Couch was sitting up on Folgers coffee cans. And there was no color in the couch, in the room. Everything just looked olive drab and gray. Two little dirty girls stuck around from the door over there, and they covered their mouth and giggled and drooled, it looked like. They were just dirty little girls. And they were giggling like us. I was weird or something. And I just stood there while the mother disappeared and nodded at the little girls. And finally she comes back in with her big old lanky husband, and he's got grease up to his elbows. He's been working on I know it wasn't a lawnmower because he clearly doesn't mow. And so, and he looked at his hands as he's walking across the room like this. And normally you do that, say, hey, I'm sorry, my hands are dirty. Not him. He looked at his hand and then stuck it out anyway. And I shook his hand. And I reached in with a dirty hand now and pulled out another card. And I said, man, I'm just coming by inviting people to church. I told your wife, you said, oh, thank you very much. We might come. Yeah, sure, right, whatever. And so I stayed as little as I could stay with them, just enough to be polite, and stepped out. And I walked back through all that. I'm telling you, there were diapers in the grass, dirty diapers, a bottle with clabbered milk in it, a nasty nipple. It's just filthy, just unkempt and filthy. Nastiest place I'd have ever seen since. And I got back to my car. I didn't even want that junk in my car. I wiped my trousers off, and I couldn't wait to fall down in my new, clean, air-conditioned car. And I cranked up the motor and waved goodbye, and I backed out to the street to go. And when I backed out, this voice in my car said, look again. And it was so clear and so strong. I thought, what? And it snapped my head. I mean, it was that clear, so I looked back. I thought the house might be on fire. It was such an urgent look again. And I looked, and there's nothing. Is that dirty mom and dirty dad waving a grease-coated hand, and two little dirty kids on a broken-down porch waving across a sea of weeds like I was their long-lost cousin, like they was glad to see me, and I was disgusted. And then the voice, while they're all waving, and I just politely wave back, and then the voice says, now that's how I found you. To get to your heart's door, I had to wade past years of neglect, nastiness. I had to ignore the filthy, cluttered playthings of your dirty mind. I brushed the grass from my trousers. I pulled the sticky cobwebs from my hair. I paused before I knocked, and I wondered if you were worth the knock. But I knocked, and I found you. So real was that, and so genuine was that speech to me as I was driving away, that I pulled off the shoulder on the side of the road at the stop sign just 100 yards or less away. And I wept. I bawled. I asked God to forgive me. So badly did I feel. Please forgive me. If you forgive me for my attitude, if you forgive me for my coldness, if you forgive me for my pride, my arrogance, I will come back to this family, and I'll come back the right way. I'll knock on their door to love them and win them. And I did. I made good on my promise. I came back. I came back as a friend instead of a pastor. And I was able to baptize Dave, and his little girls and him started coming to church, and his wife didn't. She couldn't see a big picture at all. We didn't know she was involved with a couple of people at her work, and she was just a survivor. They would pay her a little bit for her attention, and it helped with the family's debts until they kidnapped her and took her across state lines, took her to Oklahoma, tied her to a bed in a hotel, filled her body full of drugs, abused her for a week before they got caught. The authorities brought her back. They put her in one of Texas' 2 mental asylums. They put her in the one up at Terrell, Texas. I got the phone call to go visit with her. Trying to talk to her and pray with her in the hospital was like trying to talk to a 4-year-old child. Her mind had been affected by the overdose of drugs. Her spirit was ravaged from guilt and shame. She had enough presence of mind to know what she had done. It's amazing today that with all these years gone by, I can stand here and tell you that I believe Diane is a part of the kingdom of heaven. I believe she's been forgiven. She just wanted me to pray with her, and I prayed. And while I'd be praying, she'd grab my arm and say, please pray. Pray, Brother Carpenter, please pray. I'm praying. Diane, I'm praying. Let me just hold your hands. Just give me your hand. Let me hold them. Let me pray with you. Sometime later, some of the drugs would stop affecting her quite the way they did. She'd come around somewhere, someday she'd wake up and say, I blew my life. I wasted my life. My life is meaningless. I lost the opportunity to be a mother of 2 beautiful girls. Her husband tried so faithfully to raise the girls by himself with mom in the mental institution. And there's no point to this. I'm just going to wrap up right here with this and tell you that here's the significance of Matthew's genealogy. No matter how much you think you screwed up in your days of just trying to survive and get by, you're always going to be part of God's bigger story. So you messed up. And your little individual story is pretty pathetic. You really messed some stuff up, didn't you? There's some stuff don't you wish you could rewrite some chapters? Oh, I do. Boy, I've got some chapters in my life. If God had given me an eraser, I would love to erase some of them and just write them over. And I could do it better now. But at the time, under the circumstances, I did what I knew to do and what I thought to do. And I did it badly, but I didn't think so at the time. And so all of us come to a certain place finally in our years. We look back and realize I probably got less to be proud of than I do more to be ashamed of. Wish I could rewrite it. The point I want to make today is there's no need. There's no need to rewrite it. You did what you did. You were a survivor. You're just a little small fish in a big pond trying to write your story and survive the best you can. But let me tell you something. God knows the plans that he has for you while you're writing your worst chapter. God knows the plan. Where do you think God was when Tamar was out there trying to hustle Judah and seduce him? Why didn't you stop her, God, so the story would be clean? All you had to do was interrupt it. God, surely you can get involved in our lives well enough. You can clean us up in the process of life. Stop her. Don't let this be Judah's legacy. But God doesn't do that. We write our books. We write our stories. We make our mistakes. We blunder. And the good thing is that doesn't take you out of God's big story. That's just your story. Rahab, you'll always be the harlot. Rahab the harlot, by faith. There's the key. Her faith overcame her failure. And her faith is what put her in the grand story of God. I'll just quit with that. Keep the faith, because you're going to have lots of failures. But if you keep the faith, your faith will overcome your failures. And one day, all of us will sit around a grand marriage supper of the Lamb and realize how our little insignificant life was still connected to the grand story of the Messiah. I'm going to be in Matthew 1 one day. And then Ernest, God bless him, he wasn't much of a man, was he? But he gave birth to Danny. Danny, he gave birth to, well, are you hearing me? You're in God's story. I know you messed up. There might be a Tamar, there might be a Rahab, there might be a Ruth here today. There might be a Bathsheba. There might just be a lot of saints who never do anything wrong, and that's good too. It's just that you still will seem awfully insignificant unless you remember that your faith is what connected you to Abraham. Remember that connection? All of you who believe are sons of Abraham. You're part of that story that started in Matthew 1 with Abraham. And Abraham begat Isaac. And Abraham begat Danny. And Abraham begat Howard. And Abraham begat Scott. And Abraham begat Diane. And you got the connection? Your little story is in God's big story. He's got it. He's got the big one under control. You just keep living yours the best you can.